Welcome everybody to our Wednesday edition of Global Studies Under Quarantine. So glad you could all make it for this week's episode. That's what it's turned into lately. I appreciate your patience for one. Secondly, your diligence. A lot of you have reached out for help on your essay paper, and I appreciate that a lot. So for all the things that you have been doing behind the scenes to get things done, all of us teachers at Northwest greatly appreciate it. As you can see down here on the right hand side is I got 5 new essays, updated essays to grade. I have 104 assignments that have been turned in. I'm waiting for that number to climb. Hopefully I can get into the 120s, 130s. We have 168 or 69 kids in Global Studies 7th grade. So as you can see, we have a lot of people who have not turned in some of these assignments. Last week I was a little bit disappointed I shouldn't say disappointed, I was surprised. I was surprised that only 19 people turned in the optional work. Again, it is optional. But I could tell a lot of you access Canvas from that. So just because you didn't turn it in, don't get me wrong. I understand you probably did it or at least look through it, and I appreciate that very, very much. So that's all we're asking you at this point. We're in uncharted waters, and the only thing we can do is put information in front of you, and hopefully that you're taking that in and understanding that you need to take care of yourself first, and then secondly, if you have time to look at some of this information that your classes are presenting. If you get to a Wednesday or throughout the week and you just don't get something done, we're not going to hold it over your head. But these 3 things are all things that I can still grade. So, I've been waiting for this one to kind of climb a little bit. We got to over 100, so I'm going to start grading that this week. I'm going to grade the essays that have been resubmitted, which, phenomenal job, guys. Unreal. So proud of you for your essays that you've turned in. Extra credit, you guys have been hammering that out. I think I had 30-some like 2 weeks ago. We're up to 52, so keep that extra credit up. That's worth 10 points. It'll help you out a lot. So with the points that we have right now, look, we have 10, 56, so that's 66 points. And then we have, this is 56, and this is 10, and this is 10. So we have 76 points. If you do that extra credit, that's a huge bump in your grade. So just FYI, if you guys aren't happy with your grade at this point, that's one thing that you can do very easily. First thing, you're going to watch our video here. Second thing, you're going to click on these slides. It's a little update. I'm going to go through a little quick lesson here, and then I'll show you your HyperDoc, and I'll turn you loose for the week. So over the course of the next 7 days, hopefully you can get some of this stuff done, and we can get it rolling. So, April 15th quarantine schedule. I'm just going to present this so it's a little more official. I can keep everything within the lines, and if it will load, going. Oh, so close. And we got her. All right. So, again, this virus is super ugly. I don't know. These new photos they've put out here is just alarming in sense. I don't know what people are thinking when they look like that. But anyway, grading update. Remember, any new material we put out will not be graded. It's optional. It's enrichment. It's for you to stay sane, to try and build a schedule, and to help build your knowledge. I mean, we're still trying to do our job. We're getting paid to do our job, and that's what we want to roll out in front of you. So, things that you can do: Global Issues Essay, Chapter 14 Notes, and extra credit. So one of those things is still optional, even though it's part of our grade right now. Concept review: authoritarian governments versus democratic governments, right? Authoritarian, I am telling you what to do. You listen to me or I will hurt you, right? And democratic government is you tell me what to do. I vote. I don't like you. I'm going to vote you out, okay? If you like me, you're going to keep me in power. And then we set limits so that the same person can't rule for so many years. So China has an authoritarian government, and India has a democratic government. So India has a government that runs more like ours, and China has a government that runs more like, hey, we suggest you do this very strongly or we might hurt you. So China is controlled by the Communist Party. Their leader is not elected. The Communist Party elects them and puts them in power. Sorry, my backlighting's bad. I look like I'm in a dark room, but I'm not, I swear. So he's not elected through the people. The Communist Party at some levels are elected through little elections, but for the most part, if you're not in the Communist Party, you hold very little power in China, right? So what we have for you, and this will be in your HyperDoc too, but I put this out there just as a way of presenting the information a little bit easier way, is read from the following article. So there's one called "The Lockdown is Not Over for People in Wuhan," right? Despite easing restrictions. So there's a Guardian article that you can read through there. There are some links that are in there as well. And then secondly, if I shift, oops, so I clicked here. If I can shift the image, so you have, when that goes off, you'll have another link down here for your YouTube video. All right, and there's an article and a video for China, and there's an article and video for India as well. So just FYI on that. Secondly, India is controlled by a democratically elected government, so much more like us, right? Leader of India, okay, about 1.3 billion citizens vote for their leaders. This is the largest democracy in the world, or what we consider closest thing to a democracy. It's not a direct democracy, because that would be fairly insane, but they elect their leaders by voting. And from what we know from studying India, super peaceful nation, a lot of that goes along with their ideology and the way that they respect life and other life and animal life. So a very peaceful nation by nature. And then for India, we're going to read the following articles here with the links provided. Doctors say India must prepare for an onslaught as one of Asia's biggest slums reports the first coronavirus death. And 2, India lockdown is the video. India lockdown, Modi explains the world's largest lockdown as coronavirus cases surpass 10,000. So India being hit with the coronavirus is a big deal. India has 1.3 billion people and also has, again, some of the largest poverty-stricken areas, which are referred to as slums in the world. And we know from the U.S. statistics, which we can actually trust, which we'll get to that in the articles about China, and more data is coming out this week that says China and the WHO possibly colluded in some ways to downplay this event, which made the rest of the world, like Italy, Spain, even the U.S. early on, very unprepared for this thing. I mean, there were reports from the news, which we saw this week come out, and if you watch the president's pressers, he even called the news media out on this, and some of it was warranted, some of it was just him grandstanding. But talking about how people really downplayed this thing at the beginning, like, the flu is worse, you get killed in a motor accident, you'll have heart disease before you'll get strict, which is true, but our vulnerable populations are going to catch this at some point. So with India having some of the biggest poverty-stricken areas, we know in the U.S., which our infrastructure has been super loaded over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks. But poverty-stricken areas are still the worst hit, and that has been a trend that has carried through for the majority of this disease across the entire world. So this pandemic has really hit poverty-stricken areas the worst. And then those countries like, we talk about Scandinavia, like, they haven't locked down. Japan hasn't locked down hard yet. And part of the reason is their medical capacities are far superior to that of a lot of countries who are trying to deal with this thing. And so when it does hit, they want people to be infected, to be treated, and to be released so that it doesn't damage a large majority of their population, because they can handle the severe cases without people having to go to the hospital for mild respiratory ailments. So that's an interesting way to look at it. We've done the opposite. We've pretty much had shelter in place or a smaller lockdown, closed schools, so that people don't all catch it at once. We know that everyone's going to get this at some point, and me and you may not even know we have it. We could have already had it. One of the news articles today that I read was people in California could have been exposed. I think, what did they say, 70,000 or 7,000 people from China arrive in California on the daily basis. And so they think that the coronavirus could have been in California as early as October or November. So our coastal cities, which are being hit the hardest now, California is a major tourist hub for the Chinese. They only have 540 cases. New York, on the other hand, they have thousands and thousands of cases, possibly because China's not a major tourist destination in New York as compared to California. So that time of that immunity was built up slower in California versus New York, and that's why we're seeing the demographic differences in those numbers. So interesting stuff. So these are the questions we'll go over in your HyperDoc here in a minute. So I'm just going to jump over to that really quickly so you can see that before we take off and let you work for the week. So your HyperDoc here, and I break it down on what is in the HyperDoc here in 1 second. So we'll see that. If I can pull this up here. There we go. So in our HyperDoc, okay, all the information's on the left-hand side, and your answers go on the right. So the first one is the concept overview. China's authoritarian, India's democratic. So we can review that. Then it goes into a China profile. China is led by the Communist Party leader, Jinping. Again, we just went over that. Here are the articles. Here's India's leader in the articles that we just went over. And then down here at the bottom, after reading and watching the material about India and China, answer the following questions in Canvas. Well, what I have is this HyperDoc. You'll make a copy of it and then upload this to Canvas. Imagine you are the leader of India and China. Which leader has more a difficult time dealing with COVID-19? Now think about the freedoms that we have in the U.S. and the struggles that we've had to say stay at home unless you absolutely need to. What is a need? I mean, we went through this in our econ unit. What is a need versus a want? We all have a different idea of that. I need to go out and get a pizza. Right? You don't need to. No. Not at all. You can make your own pizza by going to the grocery store once every 2 weeks and buying the ingredients for that. Or they have homemade crust, which I've been doing with my kids, the little tiny ones. Those are nice. Gives them something to do. Creates a mess for me. But just think about what's easier. If you're an authoritarian government, say, if you go walk on the street, we'll shoot you. Or we'll arrest you. Or we'll beat you. Or we trust you to do the right thing. What's going to have a harder time and success rate? Number 2, think about the images from the videos. And what kind of infrastructure did you see? Roads, hospitals, electric grid, plumbing, just poverty in general, by the buildings, by the just the view that it gives you. What nation seems to have a better ability to handle the virus with its infrastructure? Okay, so give me your opinion on that. And again, these are all opinion questions. You can't be wrong as long as you justify your answer. And lastly, there is a lot of bad information about COVID-19 around the world. Which government, India or China, would you trust to tell you the truth about what's going on there? And they both have over 1 billion people. China seemingly had 84,000 cases. India is already at 10,000 plus. So it's hard to tell, right? So you need to come up with your own idea of who you think you would trust better. And again, I also added these, the map of COVID cases again, just to give you an idea of where we're at around the world, right? So that'll load here in a second. The map that you're used to seeing. This is a good indicator of what's going on across the globe. You think we're out of the woods a little bit here, but at the same time, you look at these graphs of how things are spinning across. Per capita, the U.S. is doing really well. Total numbers, we've surpassed a lot of people in a lot of cases. And then lastly, how's Iowa doing? Check that out. See how we're doing as a state. Again, our peak is supposed to be in about 11 days, and so we'll see if our healthcare system is ready, and continue to do your part to social distance. Again, here at Northwest, we miss you all. We wish we could see each and every one of your faces 5 days a week. Go through your struggles, listen to your successes, but at the same time, you can still reach out to us if you need to. Email, in many cases, social media. We've been live on Twitter and Instagram, so repost those things and let us know how you're doing. Again, we love you, we miss you, and hope to see you soon. Go Trojans.